Good God, we're so back. That ending was peak Game of Thrones, and even though this is only a trial of 7, it literally felt like an epic battle was about to begin. When the theme music kicked in and we heard it for the first time since we were teased it in episode 1 when Dunk relieved his bowels by the tree, it quite literally had me running around the room with excitement. This was the episode that lost all of the lightheartedness that we've come to be familiar with over the course of the first 3 episodes, and we were plunged into the darkness that we're used to in the Game of Thrones universe. With a 6,000-year-old tradition being the shield that Prince Aerion was hiding behind as Ser Duncan The Tall sword was made of complete and utter honor. This episode was all about bringing to light that very honor and showing us how standing by it is what rewarded those that exhibited it, with there also being a moment in the episode with Daeron's dream and it potentially showing us Ser Dunk's fate. This was easily the best episode in the season for sure, so let's get into it. Here is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms episode 4 ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Why Baelor Targaryen sided with Ser Dunk. The most impactful moment in this episode came right at the end of it when Ser Duncan was struggling to make up his numbers so he'd have 7, and then after delivering a powerful speech, Baelor Targaryen, hand to the king, offered to join his side after storming through. Throughout this episode, we saw Baelor leaning into the type of Targaryen that we saw in episode 2 of the show and how he believes in honor, integrity, and protecting the innocent. The very thing that makes up a knight. If there's one thing that we've learned about Dunk over these 4 episodes, it's that he's the most honorable and noble knight of them all, and he exhibited that without a sword and a shield. Baelor said to Maekar during the ending when Maekar was disappointed that he was siding with him, "This man protected the innocent, as every true knight must. Let the gods decide if he was right or wrong." So this showed which side Baelor was truly on, and that he didn't just stand by his family because of namesake, but he stood by what he believed was right. He couldn't just sit back and watch a man that did the right thing just be accused and found guilty. With Dunk behind bars and Baelor summoning him, Dunk was still showing respect to those that he felt deserved it, which was Baelor. Baelor said how Aerion wanted Dunk's head for what he did, but he wasn't going to permit that to happen. Instead, he proposed the possibility that Dunk put forward an option of trial by combat. This instantly put the thought in my mind that Baelor didn't respect Aerion in the slightest and that he embodied all of the bad traits of Maekar, and more specifically, a Targaryen. So if they had a trial by combat, Dunk would most likely win, and then it would take Aerion out of the equation moving forward. So one element of trouble would be removed from House Targaryen. That's why Baelor was keen to know just how good of a knight Ser Duncan truly was, because if he was half decent, then he'd stand to walk away and not be viewed as guilty. However, as we saw with Aerion, he was a coward just as much as he was a tyrant, and instead of participating in a trial by combat, he put forward the idea of a trial of 7. This is a procedure that hadn't been used in over 100 years. A trial of 7 is a 6,000-year-old Andal process where they believed that if 7 individuals fought off against another 7 individuals, then the gods being honoured would intervene and see the actual guilty party punished. This was also simply a way for Aerion to not be the only target. It meant that he could have members of the Knights Guard there, which would put skill and power in his favour, whilst Ser Duncan would need to beg around Ashford for anybody that would be willing to turn their back on the crown and the dragon in order to stand by him. This is basically what we saw happening, but amongst those, there were actually some considered to be honourable men, and they were willing to fight alongside him, even if they didn't have working legs. This led Raynmun Baratheon to stand alongside Dunk, mainly because he wanted to get in on the action. Raynmun Fossaway, a brand new knight that was sworn in following his cousin, Sir Stephen Fossaway, losing his honour and siding with the prince for a lordship. Sir Beesbury, Sir Hardying, and also Sir Robin Rising, the very person that we met during the beginning of episode 3. Raynmun Baratheon, despite his animated characteristics and the light-hearted persona, he was actually considered to be a formidable knight back in his day, so I'm intrigued to see just how he fights in this trial of 7. The gold armour does definitely look the part. This still left Dunk with 1 man less than what he needed, and if he didn't fill the extra space, then he'd be found guilty. There was an extremely powerful speech that Dunk gave here about how Sir Arlan fought alongside many of the noble men that were seated there, about to watch for entertainment, and now he felt like it was their time to return the favour. However, they didn't. The Brute of Bracken stood up and let out a fart as if to show that Dunk was well and truly screwed. Has courage deserted the noble houses of Westeros? Are there no true knights among you? That line cut deep, and with Baelor Targaryen then riding in and being by his side, it showed that he was a man that deserved to sit on the Iron Throne one day. He believed in what was right and went against what was wrong, similarly to King Viserys. Throughout this episode, outside of the ending, we did also see Baelor siding with Ser Duncan on a few different occasions. For example, he didn't believe that Duncan kidnapped Egg, which was an accusation that he was being accused of, and he also said that he'd have done the same as Dunk if he was in the same situation. But his noble background would have permitted him to have done so without consequences. Baelor wasn't going to allow Aerion to have his head, nor the hand that he struck him with, or the foot that he did either, which to me showed that he saw something in Dunk and wanted to side with the man that he believed was good. So that's why he fought as a part of Duncan's champions, even though it went against his brother and his brat of a nephew. Why did Egg lie to Ser Duncan the Tall? Egg lying to Ser Duncan was something that actually had a lot of thought behind it, and I don't know why, but that actually surprised me a bit. Egg was originally in the tavern with his brother because Daeron was supposed to be participating in the tourney, and Egg was going to be his squire. However, that didn't end up happening because Daeron was essentially too frightened to participate, and he wasn't a very good knight. Daeron actually shaved Egg's hair off as well, so that he wouldn't be spotted as a Targaryen whilst they were there. When Daeron was sitting in the bar, just intoxicated, Egg was disappointed that he wasn't able to go to the tourney, so that's why he followed Dunk. He always wanted to be a squire, and this was his opportunity to do so. Egg's hatred for his brother Aerion was something that was also brought to light in this episode of the show. Egg said to Baelor that he wished that Ser Duncan had killed Aerion, and with Egg also siding with Dunk in the Trial of Seven and being his squire, it showed which side he was truly on and that Duncan had been more of a brother to him in this short time than Aerion had been for the entirety of his life. Egg wanted Ser Duncan to slay his brother during the Trial of Seven so that it would almost be like a form of revenge for all of the times that he'd torment him during the night with his blade. We also found out why Aerion took such an insult to the puppet show when the dragon was slain by Tanzil. Aerion apparently believed that he was a dragon in human form that walked amongst men, so the death of one being depicted in the puppet play was seen as an act of aggression against House Targaryen and was said to be treated as treason. To be honest, it just ties into the narcissistic nature that Aerion had. However, with Tanzil going back to Dorne, a place that was all but basically forgotten, she might well be safe there. Daeron's dream. With Daeron siding with Ser Duncan in secret, this was where we found out more of the dream that he spoke of in episode 1 when he first laid eyes on him in the tavern in his drunken state. Daeron mentioned that in this dream he saw a fire that surrounded Ser Duncan and also a dead dragon. However, Dunk was alive and the dragon wasn't. I'm going to be discussing spoilers from the novel here, so if you don't want the story to be spoiled, then feel free to skip ahead. As we know, Targaryen dreams have the ability to be able to come true, and the one that Daeron had does eventually come true. I do, however, think it could be one of two things, so let's start with the first. The event that Daeron spoke of in his dream could well be depicting the tragedy at Summerhall. Within this tragedy, it was during 259 AC, around 50 years after the Ashford tourney, where the pleasure castle of House Targaryen in the Dornish marches gets engulfed in flames and it causes the death of the king and many other members of his family. Dunk did eventually die in this fire, and even though the cause of the fire wasn't quite known, it was deeply connected to King Aegon's aim to restore dragons to the Seven Kingdoms. As time goes on throughout Egg's life, he becomes obsessed and infatuated about reviving the dragons of House Targaryen, and the ritual could well be the very thing that sparked the fire. The dead dragon in Daeron's dream could also be Egg, as Egg did eventually go on to die in that fire. Whilst this could be the literal meaning of the tragedy at Summerhall, the dream that Daeron had could have more of a metaphorical meaning. The dream could be representing the outcome of the Trial of Seven. Could Dunk being present in a fire be the battle that's going to be taking place, and could the dead dragon represent Aerion being defeated by Dunk? Seeing as though he was alive in the dream, and also we did hear that important detail that Aerion viewed himself as a dragon. That could also be why Daeron was willing to be put in on the battle and go down easily, because he believed that Dunk had a greater purpose and was destined to win. The show has been dropping clues about the characters' fates in the past couple of episodes, so I'm intrigued to see if the dream that Daeron had is going to have a literal meaning or a metaphorical one. Ser Duncan's shield and the meaning of it. Before Tanzil fled Ashford, she left the shield that she painted for Ser Dunk, and when he received it, it moved him to tears. This is because everything that was on it represented what he stood for. The elm tree represented where Ser Dunk came from as a hedge knight, the shooting star symbolised the luck that he's going to need, and the summer leaves being green symbolised the success that he might well go on to have. Honor and nobility, protecting the innocent no matter what, is what Dunk stands for, and everything that he was taught from his humble beginnings are with him as he enters this trial of 7. The scene where he was walking through the tent, where he was hearing, "You're no knight, you're a fool," from the play that he watched, were words that he was believing about himself, so it showed that he was beginning to doubt himself. However, with him only being charged a copper for the worker's time and service, it highlighted how honor is something that gets you far and buys you respect, something that coin or cowardice can't. A character that we're seeing similar traits in as Ser Duncan is Raynmun Fossaway. Sir Raynmun Fossaway now. He believes in honor and that a knight stands for more than just a sword and a shield. With his cousin turning his back on Duncan after he said that he could rely on him, with no experience whatsoever, we're now about to see him enter the battlefield and protect the innocent in his own way. This is an underrated friendship in the show, and it's one that I'm fully behind. Duncan and Aegon, Duncan and Raynmun are friendship goals for sure. My review of the episode. I think this was hands down the best episode in the season so far. From the moment that it opened up, with it making us think that it was the night sky, but it being the rocky ceiling of the cell that Dunk was being held in, right up to Baelor Targaryen storming in and cementing his side of the honourable man, with the Game of Thrones theme tune finally playing. From start to finish, this episode had me hooked. I do feel the trailer gave a lot of this episode away, but it didn't take away from the surprising nature that was within it. The acting of Ser Duncan the Tall and also Egg was the best that the pair have delivered. The emotional range that Dunk had, with him not having a clue what the Trial of 7 was, to him welling up at the sigil on his shield, which reminded him of Sir Arlen and his roots, and even the passionate anger that he had at his core when he was speaking with the noble houses and pleading for somebody to fight alongside him. The level of conviction that he had was second to none, and it was his best performance. I also thought the same for Egg. He's come across as so well spoken throughout these first few episodes, but in this one, when he was just sitting in the cell and his eyes were welling up, you realised that he was a kid that just made an innocent mistake. The level of hatred that he had for his brother was something that also cut through quite a lot, and it was quite humorous. Whilst talking of Aerion, this character really does come across as an entitled, spoilt brat, and I'm loving it. It's peak Targaryen, and cowering behind the Trial of 7 because he knows that Dunk would defeat him is actually quite funny. The score in this episode could arguably be the strongest that I think we've had in the show. As I've mentioned before, the show was quite light-hearted, and that's also been shown to us through the score. However, within this episode, with there being more somber, emotional scenes, the score reflected that. And the moment where Dunk went into the tent, it had me fully immersed, not because of what I was watching with my eyes, but because of what I was hearing with my ears. The final thing I want to compliment is the way that Maekar's dialogue is written. The comedic timing is not only perfect, but I also love how the way that Maekar speaks is so different to the rest of the family. It almost feels like he's been plucked from 2026 and placed in that time period. I think that's what adds to the refreshing nature of it all. It's a good blend. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is really shaping up to be a fantastic season of television. I know there's a lot of demand for the episodes to be longer and a week's wait not necessarily being worth it for just 30 minutes, but I beg to differ. If the story isn't naturally that long, having shorter episodes makes complete sense. From the start to the end of an episode, there's no fluff, no filler, and everything that we see on screen feels valuable. I love being able to just dip in, watch 30 minutes of quality TV whilst feeling fully immersed and then just leaving and looking forward to the next. It really makes a difference. So, there you have it, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 4 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.